The goal of this puzzle was to create a moment of heightened stress by requiring players to deal with a sudden threat after being placed in a precariously disadvantageous position. In the original design of the puzzle, players would stand on a platform which was suspended from a cable and pull themselves across the chasm. Halfway across, antlion spitters would emerge and start attacking. The platform provided limited cover, and players would have to make trade-offs between taking cover and continuing to propel themselves forward. This succeeded in creating the desired spike in intensity, but unfortunately, the lateral movement of the platform caused considerable motion sickness for most playtesters. Even players who were comfortable with the vertical movement of elevators elsewhere in the game were adversely affected here. The puzzle that we shipped retains the same sense of tension due to being stranded in the middle of a chasm under attack, but does not rely on physically moving the player. The upper portion of the wooden platform is deliberately devoid of any substantial cover, which encourages players to jump onto the platforms below. On the lower platforms, we provide enough cover to protect players from antlions, but also leave them feeling vulnerable out in the middle of the chasm. The cover here is porous and breakable, increasing the sense of urgency and requiring players to engage the antlions from their compromised position.
Alyx, we're getting close to the vault now. You're not going to have many more chances to use your resin.
Good point. I'll see if there are any upgrades I can use.
I can't believe my pistol's made it this far.
I was thinking about giving it to Gordon.
That is about as deadly as that thing's gonna get.
In cases where the player had to face off against Combine in relatively open spaces like this one, we often found that playtesters would backtrack to safety and attempt to pick away at the soldiers from a distance. The playtesters would ultimately be successful in clearing the combat space, but would feel unsatisfied with the encounter due to the repetitive and static nature of the tactics that they employed. To address this, we used a few design tools to discourage this type of player behavior. The placement of the Combine suppressor, standing on the bed of the truck at the far end of the courtyard here, is the key to the design flow of this battle. The suppressor does not move from his planted position on the far side of the courtyard while the player is on the near side. His positioning, combined with his unrelenting wall of suppressing fire, forces the player to advance in order to close the distance required to take him out, all while under the intense pressure from a carefully crafted combination of other Combine units. Additionally, if the player backtracks far enough from the fight, the more mobile Combine soldiers in the encounter are told to retreat and hold their ground until the player once again advances into the combat. These elements together keep players moving forward into locations that provide for more interesting opportunities for both the player and the enemy soldiers.
After the intense combat that precedes it, this tower initially serves as a pacing break, before once again ramping up the intensity on the player's final fight up to the Combine tractor beam controls. While the lower portion of the tower does contain combat, it has been designed to cause players to engage with the space in a different way than the preceding courtyard fight. The focus here is on navigating the chaotic verticality of the tower, which we found to be particularly successful for playtesters to experience in VR. The manhacks that initially engage the player from above fly a path that deliberately has them crashing around the pipes and boards overhead, causing sparks and splinters to rain down on the player. Combined with the disorienting nature of the space, the Combine suppressor that emerges at the top of the stairwell is used to reintroduce an appropriate level of intensity and to create a sense of a struggle as the player continues to scramble closer to their goal.
He left. Those beams are coming from the top of this tower, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Last one. There's the control room.
I see it. We're almost there.
Three shells left. Out of shells.
Alyx, you there?
Yeah, Dad?
It looks like you will be able to get into the vault from up there. There's a terminal that extends a bridge to the entrance.
What's the security like inside?
I got it all laid out in front of me, and I tell you, there is security. But I've never seen anything like it. It doesn't make any sense.
I guess I'll have to improvise.
Don't worry, honey. I'll figure it out.
Alex, dead ahead. Those controls dock the vault to the station.
On it.
At the start of the previous map, we introduced the tractor beam, a failsafe device used to catch the falling vault when the last substation was knocked offline. In this location, the console looks like it could be used to control the tractor beam to dock the vault for entry via the nearby gantry on the left. We decided to have the vault crash to the ground spectacularly, but for this to work emotionally, we needed the scene to increase in tension beforehand. The whole vault docking console is absurd by design. If the console appeared too much like a legitimate puzzle, playtesters could take too long and let the air out of the scene, unsure if there was something that they could actually solve. The more inscrutable the machine looked, the more likely they were to interact with the levers and play along with the unfolding disaster. The first phase of the puzzle extends the catwalk and unlocks the main lever bank, which responds to the player's input, engaging them in the solution. Every subsequent lever thrown does nothing except increase the tension as things continue to go wrong. The back and forth radio dialogue between Alyx and Russell completes the scene with growing panic and keeps players in the moment, flipping levers in an attempt to save the vault.
All right. Here we go. Time to go rescue the savior of humanity.
You know, honey, you haven't been doing too bad yourself. Earth could have used you in the 7-Hour War.
Maybe we'd have lasted 8. All right. Looks like the bridge is fully extended. Just need to gently dock the vault to the bridge. How hard can that be? Oh god. Okay, well, one of these has to bring in the vault for docking. Right? Right?
Almost certainly.
Maybe?
No, not that one. Alex, the bridge isn't moving. Why isn't the bridge not moving?
I know. Russ, I can see it not moving. Oh god.
Alex! Alex! Alex!
Alex? Alex! Alex, are you okay?
I think I just killed Gordon Freeman.
The vault's right there. Just go in and get him. What's left of him?
I'm on my way.
Alert! Response team. Overload protocol. Angle. Cauterized. Flash. Angle. Cauterized. Flash.
5 years ago, we placed playtesters beneath an idling Half-Life 2 Strider. It was a really simple prototype, but the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. This experience convinced us we should pursue a Strider encounter in VR. and as a result, we built dozens of prototypes over the next few years. Some designs pressed playtesters into very close contact with the Strider. Some had a Strider chase them through a simple environment, or shoot at them through porous cover. In other cases, the Strider would destroy a wall the player was hiding behind or give a performance the player was meant to observe. A prototype built in 2017 squared the player directly off with a Strider in a quarry, combining many of our ideas into one experience. Based on the success of this prototype, the team moved on to building the shipping experience ahead of you, although it would take another 3 years of refinement to complete. Each iteration brought us a new set of rules and players' expectations. The Strider encounter ahead is a carefully crafted collection of beats, shaped by our own ideas of what would be exciting and fun, refined over a long period of playtesting.
Through many iterations of the Strider encounter, we would find ourselves having functionally solved a problem, only to realize that we also had to fictionally contextualize the solution so that it made sense. For example, we designed this entire map to include combat with Combine soldiers. But how should we fictionally place them in this destroyed space? How could we put a disabled Strider close to the player? What were the Combine doing here prior to the vault collapse? This soldier was placed here to communicate to the player that some Combine were in the area investigating an antlion infestation before the vault fell on them. In fact, you can see some dead antlions nearby. If you listen closely, you'll hear the soldier trying to contact the rest of his squad, letting the player know that they are not alone and that there is likely to be more combat ahead.
Two shells left.
Although we could excuse a few random Combine in this area left over from investigating the antlion infestation, we needed a way to justify the large squads of Combine in the combat encounters that occur later in the level. These two Combine are part of a squad sent down looking for survivors after the vault collapse, and their dialogue is designed to inform the player that this Strider they have found may not be dead. Fictionally, it is the player's combat with these two soldiers that alerts the rest of the Combine in this area to the player's presence.
A Strider! Deactivated though. Whew, lucky break there. Could you imagine that thing blocking your way?
Oh man, Roz, don't jinx me.
For many players, Striders are the most feared and powerful enemies in the Half-Life franchise, and we thought it would be interesting to flip player expectations on their head and experience what it would feel like to team up and cooperate with a Strider. Our initial concept was inspired by Aesop's fable of the Lion and the Mouse, with the player freeing a disabled Strider who would later help the player escape by clearing the way forward. Initially, the parking garage was a Combine silo, and it was much easier fictionally to have some type of Combine device which could constrain a Strider without injury. When the location changed to a collapsed parking garage, we constrained the Strider by trapping it in the elevator shaft, held down by the elevator car. After being freed, the injured Strider would lash out at anything nearby, Combine and player alike, as it tried to escape. This was a strong story when told aloud, but expressing it in a way that was understood by players turned out to be difficult. keeping the Strider around throughout the level, alternating between injured and angry states as the player slowly picked their way through the garage, was confusing to playtesters, and we had a very hard time trying to find the right balance. Playtesting feedback was really consistent around this. So although we loved the idea, we let it go in favor of a more straightforward and achievable dynamic of hunter and prey that eventually shipped. The year we spent pursuing the lion and mouse idea wasn't wasted, however, as we created and refined many of the different story beats that shipped. We also crafted some performances and technology that led to the success of the final experience.
Few cells left.
The Strider encounter boils down to a set of performances and the Strider's AI-driven minigun. Maintaining the illusion that the Strider was aware of and hunting the player while delivering these performances required a delicate coordination between animation and AI systems. We used a variety of approaches to make the Strider feel like an intelligent creature hunting the player. Players in VR move very slowly by first-person shooter standards, so we have the Strider alternate between chasing performances, following the player through the level, and then hunting performances, focused on tracking and firing at the player, or looking for them. Triggering the different stages of this pursuit took a lot of playtesting. We paid close attention to how playtesters would move through the level, and then built the triggers and iterated on the animations to support the most common behaviors. It was very much a back and forth conversation to evolve a beat into something that most players would believe the Strider was truly hunting them. Early playtesters would grow weary of being shot at without any downtime or contrasting experiences. So we identified the beats that would create that contrast and layer them in when we saw playtesters become fatigued. Things like the Strider bashing the wall, walking over you, chasing you up an elevator shaft, all acted as ways to break up the experience and surprise the player. Whenever we had feedback a playtester was growing or looked bored or fatigued, we would brainstorm different ways to insert these beats, and then test it to verify that they were paced correctly. One of the tools we used was a sophisticated look-at system on the Strider. The system tracked the player and would procedurally orient different parts of the Strider to face the player. The body, minigun, and Gauss cannon all had different look-ats to break up the effect when the Strider lost or acquired the player. These could be independently enabled or disabled at specific times to make it feel like the Strider was directly addressing the player. In each animation of the sequence, the look-at on the minigun and body would be enabled or disabled based on whether the Strider should be able to see the player at that point.
Alex, the Strider! Look out, it's alive!
Moving!
It was important to communicate clearly to the player that they were being hunted by the Strider at this point. We wanted players to see the Strider dust itself off and fixate on them, so that there would be no doubt that they were now the prey. This elevator ride was a useful tool to achieve this, as it is one of the few moments of the game that we have a captive audience. The elevator door facing the Strider was carefully designed to provide enough protection, so that players would feel safe, but enough visibility to see the Strider's performance.
Talked a lot about the experience of the Strider minigun blasting through the walls and floors of the parking garage while hunting the player, but we weren't sure we would be able to deliver destructible cover until around 6 months prior to shipping. To address this, we designed the destructible cover to visually communicate that it was being broken down prior to actually fracturing and breaking. Initially, the cover would look like an unremarkable piece of concrete or other building material, but when it took sufficient damage, it would start to visibly crack and throw off dust particles. When the same piece of cover took further damage, it would then fracture into pre-cut physics objects and generate more dust and debris particles. Through playtesting, we determined how much damage the cover should be able to take before breaking down and forcing the player to move. In the end, the destructible cover system allowed us to deliver on our goal of giving players the impression that the Strider was capable of tearing through the parking garage with its minigun as it pursued them.
In this area of the map, we began hearing from some playtesters that they found the minigun firing monotonous. Originally, the gun would fire at a set rate, regardless of the player's behavior. To address the monotony, we made several improvements to the Strider AI running just the minigun. The minigun will fire if it sees the player, but take a moment to acquire them. Play an acquired sound to warn them they have locked on, and then stitch the bullets towards the player in its first volley. The minigun volleys themselves were broken up to become more staccato, with random intervals in between volleys. If the player ducks behind cover, the Strider will keep firing where it last saw the player for a short period. These changes to the minigun behavior eliminated the monotony and gave players the impression that they were fleeing a living creature.
To keep the Strider engagement interesting throughout the level, we knew that we wanted to challenge the player's understanding of what the Strider was capable of. We identified this upcoming room as a space where most players felt they understood the Strider's capabilities, and built this next beat to surprise them. To create the doorframe bash moment, we used the Strider's animation to drive an offline destruction simulation that could be played back by the game engine in real time. We coupled this with particle effects and physics impulses on interactive physics objects in the room to make the player feel unsafe. To fully sell the idea that the Strider has been searching for and has found the player, we gave the Strider a moment to pause after tearing away the wall to look at the player before it started to fire again.
When playtesting the Strider encounter, we learned that players enjoyed fighting a challenging enemy but responded negatively if they took damage in a way that seemed unfair. To address this, we used audio to communicate the state of the Strider. For example, when the Strider did not have line of sight to the player, it would emit a periodic hunting sound. This sound was meant to communicate to the player that they were currently safe, but that the Strider was still there. Once the Strider had seen the player, it would switch to its chasing state and make corresponding chasing sounds. When the Strider was ready to start firing at the player, it would emit a target-acquired sound before firing. Players quickly learned this pattern of sound cues, and no longer complained about being caught unaware of the Strider's targeting state.
Alyx? Alyx?
When playtesting the Strider encounter, we learned that players enjoyed fighting a challenging enemy but responded negatively if they took damage in a way that seemed unfair. To address this, we used audio to communicate the state of the Strider. For example, when the Strider did not have line of sight to the player, it would emit a periodic hunting sound. This sound was meant to communicate to the player that they were currently safe, but that the Strider was still there. Once the Strider had seen the player, it would switch to its chasing state and make corresponding chasing sounds. When the Strider was ready to start firing at the player, it would emit a target-acquired sound before firing. Players quickly learned this pattern of sound cues, and no longer complained about being caught unaware of the Strider's targeting state.
We needed to familiarize the player with the Strider's Gauss cannon firing sequence, so they'd be able to recognize it when they saw it again later in the map. This particular area of the map went through a lot of iteration, as we searched for ways to reliably place the player in the right spot, at the right time, looking at the right thing, the Gauss cannon, as it charged up and fired. To achieve this, we ultimately settled on using a two-handed roller door. It requires the player to stand in a specific position and orientation, and occupies their hands so we know they aren't teleporting or interacting with anything else. We even know the precise moment that the door clears their eye line, so we can be assured that they're going to see what we want them to see.
When the central theme of this map was the lion and the mouse, the encounter with the Strider ended at this point. The Strider simply exited off into the sunset. We intended for the Strider to reappear in a subsequent fight, perhaps even attacking the Combine alongside the player, but this idea was only pursued briefly before being cut. The problem was that playtesters felt cheated that they didn't get to destroy the Strider after being hunted and harassed by it for so long. In the final map, once the player steps into the rat maze below, the Strider reappears and begins hunting the player again. Because Alyx does not possess any weapons that can damage the Strider, we explored a variety of ways that the player could take out the Strider using something found in the environment. These included ideas like triggering missiles on a downed Combine helicopter, using a Combine mortar emplacement, or kicking off some type of physics event to sweep the Strider's legs out and kill it. We built prototypes of many of these ideas, and eventually narrowed down to the mounted gun solution that shipped. It was simple, repeatable, and was one of the easier solutions to train under fire.
In this sequence, we wanted the player to end the encounter by killing the Strider in a dramatic boss fight using a weapon found in the environment. This meant that we had to introduce a new weapon which was more powerful than the player's equipped weapons, and which had to remain in the environment after the fight. A mounted gun on an abandoned Combine vehicle made no sense, and after some initial tests with the downed Combine helicopter repurposed from Half-Life 2, we settled on the armored personnel carrier, since one had already been built for use in another section of the game. Since the gun mechanism itself would be seen for the first time while under pressure from the Strider, it had to have an aiming and firing mechanism that the player would understand immediately. We prototyped a variety of designs, from a machine gun that auto-fired as soon as the player grabbed the handle, to a gun that fired a sticky bomb that had to be detonated by the player after it hit its target. The auto-firing machine gun was too simple to use and lacked dramatic effect, and the extra interaction required to detonate the sticky bomb was too much to teach the player while under duress. We settled on a design that requires one hand to aim and another to both reload and fire. Requiring the player to push the firing mechanism all the way forward to reload was necessary to prevent the player from firing too rapidly. The gun's shell reloading animation is directly driven by the player's motion and communicates to the player that they must move their hand all the way forward to reload before being able to pull it back to fire.
All right, Alex. Well, that tractor beam over there looks like it'll get you up to the vault.
Got it. Whoa, yeah. Okay. Going up.
It's throwing off a lot of interference. I might not be able to talk to you in there.
No, probably not.
So, this is it.
Yeah.
And then you'll come out with Gordon safe and sound, so everything is gonna be...
Everything will be fine, Russ. Talk to you soon.
What? Why?
Dad? Dad? Okay, this is weird. But I don't know, it doesn't look too dangerous.
As the player enters the vault and is immersed in its warped reality, they lose contact with Russell. With Russell no longer available to explain what the player was seeing, we had to communicate the important concepts of the vault through the use of visual effects, physics, sound design, and music. The most important concept was that the errant bursts of uncontrolled energy causing anti-reality events was spillover of the Vortigaunt energy being used to keep the prisoner in the vault, as his influence occasionally gained the upper hand through cracks in the field. Starting from the vault crash in the prior map, we used this piece of musical sound design to represent the newly uncontrolled Vortigaunt energy being released from the vault. And this piece to accompany the reality-bending bursts caused and swayed by the G-Man's increasing reach. Within the vault, we repeat these motifs to reinforce the Vortigaunt energy mechanic that the player is ultimately able to use as a weapon against the Combine, short circuit to release the prisoner, save Eli, and complete the game. earliest days of the story design, the audio team established a corresponding aesthetic plan that employed increasingly strange sound design, soundscapes, and music, culminating in a soundscape appropriate to the broken reality of the vault and Alyx's encounter with the G-Man. While the vault level was being designed, it became apparent that the accompanying music would be crucial to selling the surreal nature of the vault. Most music in the vault is based on the musical palindrome you hear in the Sideways room. By utilizing variations of elements in this piece and warping them with multiple types of pitch and time bending, we created an appropriately abstract sonority. While strange and dislocating, it was still consistent unto itself, as well as conceptually relevant to the multidimensional nature of the G-Man and the Vortigaunt energy imprisoning him.
Life Alyx was set in a realistic type world with familiar rules. The G-Man's presence in the vault gave us fictional justification to experiment with different distortions of reality and embrace surrealism in these spaces. Early experiments with gravity anomalies and distorting spatial expectations were promising as the immersiveness of VR worked to exaggerate their impact. The surreal environments proved to be fertile for puzzle solving as well, but they tended to stall the pacing at the point in the game we needed it to be ramping up, so they weren't included in the final release. The most notable of these was in the mirrored apartment. Players originally had to spot and correct differences between the top and bottom apartment spaces in order to escape that area. Instead of surreal interactive puzzles, the first half of the vault became a journey through an increasingly bizarre set of spaces that were once the apartment building the G-Man was captured in. Supercharging the Russells with Vortigon energy helped us achieve the goal of having an unarmed player overpower the last few Supercharging the Russells with Vortigon energy helped us achieve the goal of having an unarmed player overpower the last few Combine soldiers that were guarding the G-Man. Initially, grenades and a zero-gravity hallway was how we achieved this. Separately, we'd been experimenting with using the Russells to pull and throw energy bolts from Vortigon energy nodes. This was a natural fit for the Volt combat section since it evokes the concept of supercharging the gravity gun at the end of Half-Life 2 and works with the player's well-mastered Russells throwing mechanic. This new mechanic was introduced at a point where pacing was critical, so it had to be intuitive to pick up and quick to master. Giving the player the Vortigon energy attack not only helped to tie together that this was Vortigon energy containing the G-Man, but helped to further solidify the deep Vortigon connection to Alyx. It also gave the player a chance to briefly feel like they had superpowers and be able to use that ability in a visceral, deeply physical way that's impossible in real life.
impressive work, Miss Vance.
Gordon Freeman?
Gordon Freeman. Miss Vance, you wouldn't need all that to imprison Gordon Freeman.
So, who are you?
Perhaps what I am is not as important as what I can offer you in exchange for coming all this way. Some believe the fate of our worlds is inflexible. My employers disagree. They authorize me to nudge things in a particular direction from time to time. What would you want nudged, Miss Vance?
The Combine off Earth. I want the Combine off Earth.
That would be a considerably large nudge. Too large, given the interests of my employers.
Well, you asked.
What if I could offer you something you don't know you want?
Dad? What? Is that me? What is this? What's happening?
We are in the future. This is the moment where you watch your father die. Unless...
What? Unless what?
Unless you were to take matters into your own hands. Release your father, Miss Vance. Good. As a consequence of your action, this entity will continue, and this entity will not.
Right. So he's okay, right? He lives. My dad lives.
You are aware that you've proven yourself to be of extraordinary value. A previous hire has been unable or unwilling to perform the tasks laid before him. We have struggled to find a suitable replacement until now.
No! I just want to go home. Send me home!
I'm afraid you misunderstand the situation, Miss Vance.
Wait! Hey, wait! Wait! Wait!
Gordon! Gordon! Wake up, Gordon! She's gone, Gordon. She's gone. Son of a bitch, it has unforeseen consequences. I knew it. When I get my hands on him, I'm gonna kill him. I gotta figure this out. Now. Come on, Gordon. You got work to do.